Hey, Ajabu, how are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Yeah, I'm checking in a little bit earlier than was scheduled, so I'm glad that you are the first to comment. I appreciate it. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you. Yeah, I just got home, so we're going to, well, I'm still in the car, but we are going to continue the reading of this book. I said eight, so I'm going to wait until eight when the others come, or I could start before they get here. I don't want to do that to them, as I know they're probably waiting to come at 8 o'clock. But how are you doing this morning? What time is it where you're at now, Ajabu? I think it's probably, I think you're like 8 hours ahead. So it's probably like 4 o'clock in the afternoon for you. I know that we are definitely not on the same time because it's just about 8 o'clock in the morning for me. It's not, yeah, it's 4 p.m. Yes, I got it right. 8 hours ahead of me, you are. 8 hours. But welcome into the live, guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Remember, we spoke about this yesterday, the day before, I believe it was, that we are going to continue reading the book Spare, Spare by the wonderful Prince Harry. Yeah, we're going to continue reading it. Yeah, I bite, I read, you listen. Oh my gosh. Look at me cat, my sidekick. My sidekick is in the place. God, what's up? I mean, I got call you, but me did up on the, but me da call him leave work, but me did up on the phone a quoting. I was gonna call you for real, sis, but I was on the phone courting, so. me da- I just say you read to us and we make noise. Okay, all right. That's understandable. That's a great deal. I never realized I never charged the phone here all night. So it kind of, I have to have the engine running so that I can keep it charging. So we will see. But anyway, it is now 8 o'clock and we are going to begin. Right? We are now on to page 13 of Spare, the book written by Harry, Prince of Wales. Late at night, after lights out, some of us would sneak out, go roaming up and down the corridors. A strict violation of the rules, but I was lonely and homesick, probably anxious and depressed, and I couldn't abide being locked into my dormitory. There was one particular teacher who, whenever he caught me, would give me a tremendous clout, always with a copy of the New English Bible, the hardback version. It is indeed, I, it is indeed, I always thought, a very hard back. Getting hit with it made me feel bad about myself, bad about the teacher, and bad about the Bible. Nevertheless, the next night, I'd go right back to flouting the rules. If I wasn't roaming the corridors, I was roaming the school grounds, usually with my best mate, Hennes. Like me, Hennes was officially a Henry, but I always called him Hennes, and he called me Has. Skinny with no muscles and hair that stood up in permanent surrender, Hennes was all heart. Whenever he smiled, people melted. He was the only boy who mentioned mommy to me after she disappeared. But that winning smile, that tender nature, made you forget that Hennes could be quite naughty. A huge pick-your-own farm lay beyond the school grounds on the other side of a low fence. And one day, Hennes and I hopped over, landed face first in carrot forest, row after row. Nearby were some fat, juicy strawberries. We went along, stuffing our mouths, popping up now and then like meerkats to make sure the coast was clear. Whenever I bite into a strawberry, I'm there again, in those furrows, with lovely Hennes. Days later, we went back. This time, After we had eaten our fill and hopped over the fence, we heard our names. We were heading along a car track in the direction of the tennis courts, and slowly we turned. Coming straight for us was one of the teachers. You there! Stop! Hello, sir. What are you two doing? Nothing, sir. You have been to the farm. No. Open your hands. We did. Busted. Crimson palms. He reacted as if it were blood. I can't remember what punishment we received. Another clout with the New English Bible, detention, often called death, a trip to Mr. Gerald's office, whatever it was, I knew I didn't mind. There was no torture Ludgrove could dish out that surpassed what was going on inside of me. All right, guys, we are continuing. Welcome into the live, guys. We are reading Spare. I hope you are enjoying it because I am certainly into this book and I ain't going to stop until I've read every last word. Mr. Marston, while patrolling the dining room, often carried a little bell. It reminded me of the bell on the front desk at a hotel. Ding! Have you your room? He'd ring the bell whenever he wanted to get a group of boys' attention. The sound was constant and utterly pointless. Abandoned children don't care about a bell. Frequently, Mr. Marston would feel the need to make an announcement during meals. He'd begin speaking and no one would listen or even lower their voice. So he'd ring the bell. Ding! 100 boys would keep on talking, laughing. He'd ring it harder. Ding! 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 Each time the bell failed to bring silence, Mr. Marston's face would grow a shade redder. Fellas, will you listen? No, was the simple answer. We would not. It wasn't disrespectful, however. It was simple acoustic. We couldn't hear him. The hall was too cavernous, and we were too absorbed in our conversations. He didn't accept this. He seemed suspicious, as if our disregard of his bell was part of some greater coordinated plot. I don't know about the others, but I was part of no plot. Also, I wasn't disregarding him. Quite the contrary, I couldn't take my eyes off the man. I often asked myself what an outsider might say if they could witness this spectacle. 100 boys chatting away while a grown man stood before them, frantically and uselessly abusing a tiny brass bell. Adding to this general sense of bedlam was the psychiatric hospital down the road. Broadmoor. Sometime before I came to Ludgrove, a Broadmoor patient had escaped and killed a child in one of the nearby villages. In response, Broadmoor installed a warning siren, and now and then they test it to make sure it was in working order. A sound like doomsday, Mr. Marston's bell on steroids. I mentioned this to Pa one day. He nodded sagely. He had recently visited a similar place as part of his charitable work. The patients were mostly gentle, he assured me, though one stood out, a little chap who claimed to be the Prince of Wales. Hey, Sister Winsome, how are you doing? Welcome into the live. Thank you so much for stopping by, Sister Winsome. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you. Pa said he had wagged a finger at this impostor and severely reprimanded him. Now look here, you cannot be the Prince of Wales. I'm the Prince of Wales. The patient merely wagged his finger back. Impossible. I'm the Prince of Wales. Pa liked telling stories, and this was one of the best in his repertoire. He'd always end with a burst of philosophizing. If this mental patient could be so thoroughly convinced of his identity, no less than Pa, it raised some very big questions indeed. Who could say which of us was sane? Who could be sure they weren't the mental patient? Hopelessly deluded, humored by friends and family? Who knows if I'm really the Prince of Wales? Who knows if I'm even your real father? Maybe your real father is in Broadmoor, darling boy. He laughed and laughed, though it was a remarkably unfunny joke, given the rumor circulating just then that my actual father was one of Mummy's former lovers, Major James Hewitt. One cause of this rumor was Major Hewitt's flaming ginger hair, but another cause was sadism. Tabloid readers were delighted by the idea that the younger child of Prince Charles wasn't the child of Prince Charles. They couldn't get enough of this joke for some reason. Maybe it made them feel better about their lives that a young prince's life was laughable. Never mind that my mother didn't meet Major Hewitt until long after I was born. The story was simply too good to drop. The press the press rehashed it, embroidered it, and there was even talk that some reporters were seeking my DNA to prove it. My first imitation that, after torturing my mother and sending her into hiding, they would soon be coming for me. To this day, nearly every biography of me, every longish profile in a paper or magazine touches on Major Hewitt, treats the prospect of his paternity with some seriousness, including a description of the moment Pa finally sat me down for a proper heart to heart, reassuring me that Major Hewitt wasn't my real father. Vivid scene, poignant, moving, and wholly made up. If Pa had any thoughts about Major Hewitt, he kept them to himself. Yes, guys, there we are. We are going to be moving on to page 15. Yeah, when I read, you all read. Because y'all know that's my favorite pastime. When y'all don't see me, I'm engrossed in a book, reading about something somewhere written by someone's account of whatever is happening or whatever happened sometime back. And this one, I couldn't pass up the opportunity, guys. I could. We are on to page 15, my friends. My mother legendarily said there were three people in her marriage, but her math was off. She left Willie and me out of the equation. We didn't understand what was going on with her and Pa, certainly, but we intuit enough. We sensed the presence of the other woman because we suffered the downstream effects. Willie long harbored suspicion about the other woman, which confused him, tormented him, and when those suspicions were confirmed, he felt tremendous guilt for having done nothing, said nothing sooner. Some say we don't read. Ajabu said we don't read, we give you our ears, and I gladly take them, my love. Thank you so much. I was too young to I was too young, I think, to have suspicions, but I couldn't help but feel the lack of stability, the lack of warmth and love in our home. Now, with Mommy missing, the math swung hard in Pa's favor. He was free to see the other woman openly, as often as he liked, but seeing wasn't sufficient. Pa wanted to be public about it. He wanted to be above board, and the first step towards that aim was to bring the boys into the fold. Willie went first. He had bumped into the other woman once at the palace, but now he was formally summoned from Eton for a high-stakes private meeting. At Highgrove, I think, over tea, I believe, it went well. I gathered from Willie later, though he didn't go into details. He merely gave me the impression that the other woman was Camilla. She had made an e- He had made an effort which he appreciated, and that was all he cared to say. My turn came next. I told myself, no big deal. Just like going to get an injection. Close your eyes over before you know it. I have a dim recollection of Camilla being just as calm or bored as me. Neither of us much fretted about the other's opinion. She wasn't my mother, and I wasn't her biggest hurdle. In other words, I wasn't there. This bit with me. was mere formality. I wonder what we found to talk about. Horses, probably. Camilla loved them, and I knew how to ride. Hard to think of any other subject we might scrounge upon. I really wondered, right before the tea, if she'd be mean to me, if she'd be like all the wicked stepmothers in storybooks. But she wasn't. Like Willie, I did feel real gratitude for that. At last, with these strained Camilla summits behind us, there was a final conference with Pa. So, what do you boys think? We might be We thought he should be happy. Yes, Camilla had played a pivotal role in the unraveling of our parents' marriage, and yes, that meant she had played a role in our mother's disappearance. But we understood that she'd been trapped, like everyone else, in the riptide of events. We didn't blame her, and in fact, we'd gladly forgive her if she could make Pa happy. We could see that, like us, he wasn't. We recognized the vacant looks, the empty sighs, the frustration always visible on his face. We couldn't be absolutely sure because Pa didn't talk about his feelings, but we had pieced together through the years a fairly accurate portrait of him based on little things he had let slip. For instance, Pa confessed around this time that he'd been persecuted as a boy. Granny and Grandpa, to toughen him up, had shipped him off to Gordonstown, a boarding school where he was horrendously bullied. The most likely victims of Gordonstown bullies, he said, were creative types, sensitive types, bookish types. In other words, Pa, his finest qualities were bait for the toughs. I remember him murmuring ominously, I nearly didn't survive. How had he? Head down, clutching his teddy bear, which he still owned years later. You know, he's kind of weird. Teddy went everywhere with Pa. It was a pitiful object, with broken arms and dangling threads, holes patched up here and there. It looked, I imagined, like Pa might have after the bullies had finished with him. I'm sorry, guys, but that is funny. Teddy expressed eloquently, better than Pa better than Pa ever could, the essential loneliness of his childhood. Willie and I agreed that Pa deserved better. Apologies to Teddy. Pa deserved a proper companion. That was why, when asked, Willie and I promised Pa that we'd welcome Camilla into the family. The only thing we asked in return was that he not marry her. You don't need to remarry, we pleaded. A wedding could cause controversy. It could it would incite the press. It would make the whole country, the whole world even, talk about Mummy, compare Mummy with Camilla, and nobody wanted that. Least of all Camilla. We support you, we said. We endorse Camilla, we said. But please, don't marry her. Just be together, Paul. He didn't he didn't answer, but she answered straight away. Shortly after our private summits with her, she began to play the long game, a campaign aimed at marriage and eventually the crown. With Pa's blessings, we presumed. Some stories began to appear everywhere in all the papers about her private conversation with Willie. Stories that contained pinpoint accurate details, none of which had come from Willie, of course. They could only have been leaked by the one other person present. And the leaking had obviously been abetted by the new spin doctor Camilla had talked Pa into hiring. In the early autumn of 1998, having completed my education at Ludgrove the previous spring, I entered Eton. A profound shock. The finest school in the world for boys. Eton was meant to be a shock, I think. Shock must have been part of its original charter, even perhaps a part of the instructions given to its first architects by the school's founder, my ancestor Henry VI. He deemed Eton some sort of holy shrine, a sacred temple, and to that end, he wanted it to overwhelm the senses so visitors could feel like meek, abased pilgrims. In my case, mission accomplished. Henry even vested the school with priceless religious artifacts, including part of Jesus' crown or thorns. One great poet called the place Henry's Holy Shade. Over the centuries, Eton's mission had become somewhat less poetous, but the curriculum had become more shockingly rigorous. There was a reason Eton now referred to itself not as a school, but simply as school. For those in the know, there simply was no other choice. 18 prime ministers had been molded in Eton's classroom, plus 37 winners of the Victoria Cross. Heaven for brilliant boys, it could thus only be purgatory for one very unbrilliant boy. The situation became undeniably obvious during my very first French lesson. I was astounded to hear the teacher conducting the entire class in rapid, non-stop French. He assumed for some reason that we were all fluent. Maybe everyone else was, but me? Fluent? Because I did passably well on the entrance exam? Au contour mon homme, whatever that means. Afterwards, I went up to him, explained that there had been a dreadful mistake and I was in the wrong class. He told me to relax, assured me I'd be up to speed in no time. He didn't get it. He had faith in me. So I went to my housemaster, begged him to put me into this with the slower talkers, the more glacial learners, boys, exactement, boys, exactamente come moi. My French is as rusty as ever, but it is what it is. He did as I asked, but it was a mere stopgap. Once or twice I'd confessed to a teacher or fellow student that I wasn't merely in the wrong class, but in the wrong location. I was in way, way over my head. They'd always say the same thing. Don't worry, you'll be all right. And don't forget, you always have your brother here. But I wasn't the one forgetting. Willie told me to pretend I didn't know him. What? You don't know me, Harold? I don't know you? For the last 2 years, he explained, Eton had been his sanctuary. No kid brother tagging along, pestering him with questions, pushing up on his social circle. He was forging his own life, and he wasn't willing to give that up. None of which was all that new. Willie always hated it when anyone made the mistake of thinking us a package deal. He loathed it when Mommy dressed us in the same outfit. It didn't help that her taste in children's clothes ran to the extreme. We often looked like twins from Alice in Wonderland. I barely took notice. I didn't care about clothes, mine or anyone else's, so long as we weren't wearing kilts with that worrisome knife in your sock and that breeze up your arse. I didn't expect to say that, but it is. And that breeze up your arse. I was good. But for Willie, it was pure agony to wear the same blazer, the same tight shorts as me. And now to attend the same school was pure murder. I told him not to worry. I'd forget I ever knew you. But Eton wasn't going to make that easy. Thinking, thinking to be helpful, they put us under the same bloody roof, Manor House. At least I was on the ground floor. Willie was way upstairs with the older boys. Welcome into the live, guys. We are doing we're doing a few pages. I think we're going to page 20. So stay with us. We are going to page 20 before I go to bed. All right, Ajabu? Yeah. So let's continue. Let's not waste any more time. We're on to page 17. And don't forget, guys, to hit the like button and share out the live so other people can hear it. I noticed the one that I read the day before yesterday, it has almost 200 views. And I'm like, wow, oh, pretty good. It's going along. It's going along. So those people might come back to listen to this one. All right. Many of the 60, okay, page 17. Many of the 60 boys in Manor House were as welcoming as Willie. Their indifference, however, didn't unsettle me as much as their ease. Even the ones my age acted as if they had been born on the school grounds. Ludgrove had its problems, but at least I knew my way around, knew how to foxpat, knew when sweets got handed out, how to survive letter writing days. Over time, I'd scratched and clawed my way to the top of the Ludgrove pyramid. Now, at Eton, I was at the bottom again, starting over. Worse, without my best friend, Henners. He was attending a different school. I didn't even know how to get dressed in the morning. Every Etonian was required to wear a black tailcoat, white collarless shirt, white stiff collar pinned to the shirt with a stud, plus pinstripe trousers, heavy black shoes, and a tie that wasn't a tie, more like a cloth strip folded into the white detachable collar. Formal kit, they called it, but it wasn't formal. It was like a funeral. Funereal. Thank you, Ajabu. Thank you so much. And there was a reason. We were supposed to be in a perpetual mourning for old Henry VI, or else for King George, an early supporter of the school, who used to have the boys over to the castle for tea or something like that. Though Henry was my great, 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 great grandfather, and thought I was sorry for his passing and for whatever pain it had caused those who loved him, I wasn't keen on mourning the man around the clock. Any boy might balk at taking part in a never-ending funeral, but for a boy who had just lost his mom, it was a daily kick in the balls. First morning, it took forever to fasten my trousers, button my waistcoat, fold my stiff collar before finally getting out the door. Are you going to work, Winsome? Okay, be safe, my sugar, be safe. Uh-oh, where am I? Fold my stiff collar before finally getting out the door. I was frantic, desperate not to be late, which would mean being forced to write my name in a large ledger, the tardy book, one of my many new traditions I'd need to learn, along with a long list of new words and phrases. Classes were no longer classes. They were divs. Teachers were no longer teachers. They were beaks. Cigarettes were tabage. Seemingly everyone had a raging tabage habit. Okay. Chambers was the mid-morning meeting of the beaks. When they discussed the students, especially the problem students, I often felt my ears burning during chambers. Sport, I decided, would be my thing at Eton. Sport boys were separated into two groups, dry bobs and wet bobs. Dry bobs played cricket, football, rugby, or polo. Wet bobs rowed, sailed, or swam. I was a dry who occasionally got wet. I played every dry sport, though rugby captured my heart. Beautiful game, plus a good excuse to run into stuff very hard. Rugby let me indulge my rage, which some had now taken to calling a red mist. Plus, I simply didn't feel pain the way other boys did, which made me scary on a pitch. No one had an answer for a boy actually seeking external pain to match his internal. I made some mates. It wasn't easy. I had special requirements. I needed someone who wouldn't tease me about being royal, someone who wouldn't so much as mention my being the spare. I needed someone who treat me normal, which meant ignoring the armed bodyguard sleeping down the hall, whose job was to keep me from being kidnapped or assassinated. To say nothing of the electronic tracker and panic alarm I carried with me at times. My mates all met these criteria. Really? So you had to carry an electronic tracker all the time and a panic alarm. That's interesting. Okay. You see, so we are learning as we go along. Sometimes my new mates and I would escape, head for Windsor Bridge, which connected Eton to Windsor over the River Thames. Specifically, we'd head to the underside of the bridge, where we could smoke tabage in privacy. My mates seemed to enjoy the naughtiness of it, whereas I just did it because I was on autopilot. Sure, I fancied a cig after a McDonald's. Who didn't? But if we were going to bunk off, I'd I'd much prefer heading over to Windsor Castle's golf course, knocking a ball around while driving a wee bear. Still, like a robot, I took every cig offered me, and in the same automatic, unthinkable way, I soon graduated to weed. All right, so he started with a cig and then graduated to weed. All right, we are on to page 18. I'm just um when you see me looking around, it's just people on cars and all that stuff because I'm sitting in my car. So yeah, I'm being a little cheeky there, looking around at what's going on around me. All right, we are on to page 18. The game required a bat, a tennis ball, and a total disregard for one's physical safety. There were 4 players, a bowler, a batsman, and 2 fielders stationed mid-corridor, each with 1 foot in the corridor and one in a room. Not always our rooms. We often intruded on other boys trying to work. They'd beg us to go away. Sorry, we said, this is our work. The radiator represented the wicket. There was an endless debate about what constituted a catch. Off the wall? Yes, catch. Off a window? No catch. One hand, one bounce, half out. One day, the sportiest member of our group hurled himself at a ball, trying to make a tricky catch, and landed face first on a fire extinguisher hooked to the wall. His tongue split wide open. You would think after that, after the carpet had been permanently soiled with his blood, we'd have called an end to the corridor cricket. We didn't. When not playing corridor cricket, we'd lull in our rooms. We got very good at affecting postures of supreme indolence. The point was to look as if you had no purpose, as if you would bestir yourself only to be something bad, to do something bad, or better yet, stupid. Near the end of my first half, we hit on something extremely stupid. Someone suggested that my hair was a complete disaster, like grass on the moors. Well, what can be done? Let me have a go at it. You? Yeah, let me shave it off. That didn't sound right, but I wanted to go along. I wanted to be a top bloke, a funny bloke. All right then. Someone fetched the clippers. Someone pushed me into a chair. How quickly, how blithely, after a life, who is that texting me? After a lifetime of healthy growth, it all went cascading off my head. When the cutter was done, I looked down, saw a dozen pyramids of ginger on the floor, like red volcanoes seen from a plane, and knew I'd made a legendary mistake. I ran to the mirror, Suspicion confirmed. I screamed in horror. My mate screamed too, with laughter. I ran in circles. I wanted to reverse time. I wanted to scoop up the hair from the floor and glue it back on. I wanted to wake from this nightmare. Not knowing where else to turn, I violated the sacred rule, the one shining commandment never to be broken, and ran upstairs to Willie's room. Of course, there was nothing Willie could do. I was just hoping he'd tell me it would be okay. Don't freak out. Keep calm, Harold. Instead, he laughed like the others. I recall him sitting at his desk, bent over a book, chuckling, while I stood before him fingering the knobs on my newly bare head. Harold, what have you done? What a question. He sounded like Stewie from Family Guy. Wasn't it obvious? You shouldn't have done that, Harold. So we are just starting. So we are just stating the obvious now. He said a few more things that were immensely unhelpful, and I walked out. Worse ridicule was yet to come. A few days later, on the front page of the Daily Mirror was one of the tabloids. There I was with my new haircut. Headline, Harry the Skinhead. I couldn't imagine how they had got wind of the story. A schoolmate must have told someone who told someone who told the papers. They had no photo, thank goodness, but they had improvised. The image on the front page was a computer-generated rendering of the spear, bald as an egg. A lie, more than a lie, really. I looked bad, but not that bad. Hey guys! Oh my God, Janice! Janice is in the house! How are you, my darling? How are you doing, my love? Girl, you know me. You know me more than anybody here. That the book wasn't going to pass me by at all. I was going to buy it no matter what. Because I got to read it. I got to read it. And I'm not disappointed yet. I hope I won't be. I'm never disappointed reading a book anyway, unless it's boring, and I have to throw it down before I'm finished if it's boring. But this one is nowhere near boring. This one is great. Card, a card. Now yesterday, I called Janice name to you. Now yesterday, you see it? Boy, me I tell you, yeah. Yes, Janice, me that chat to you yesterday with my friend. I know some of me chat here all things good. Yeah. I was telling her I left high school 30 years ago, 30 something years ago, we left high school, Janice. And you are until this day, from high school until now, I told her you are still the only friend I have that I had in high school. Oh, official is here. Official, what's up? Official, you get jacket. Me not give jackets. Me not give jackets. I don't give jackets. They might be configured, but they're never jackets. Forgive me, Ajabu. Forgive me officially, may not even have a clue what I'm talking about. But I can see Kad and Janice, them understand what I'm talking about and win some. They may be dying head over heels right now because they know what I'm talking about. But you are welcome, my love. You are welcome. Alrighty, guys. We are going on to page 19. Page 19. We're doing this for just about an hour. Because I know I'm still tired, but I'm going to sleep. But anyway, we are going to continue. Page 19, we're on. I didn't think it could get worse. What a grievous mistake it is for a member of the royal family, when considering the media, to imagine that things can't get worse. Weeks later, the same newspaper put me on the front page again. Harry's had an accident. I'd broken a bone in my thumb playing rugby. No big deal. but the paper decided to make out that I was on life support. Bad taste under any circumstances, but a little more than a year after Mummy's alleged accident. Come on, fellas. I'd dealt with the British press all my life, but they'd never before singled me out. In fact, since Mummy's death, an unspoken agreement had governed press treatment of both her sons, and the agreement went like this: lay off, let them have their education in peace. Apparently, that agreement had now expired because there I was, splattered across the front page, made out to seem a delicate flower, or an ass, or both. And knocking on death's door. I read the article several times. Despite the somber subtext, some things were some things were very wrong with Prince Harry. I marveled at its tone. Larky. My existence was just fun and games for these people. I wasn't a human being to them. I wasn't a 14-year-old boy hanging on by my fingernails. I was a cartoon character, a glove puppet to be manipulated and mocked for fun. So, what if their fun made my already difficult days more difficult, made me a laughing stock before my schoolmates, not to mention the wider world? So, what if they were torturing a child? All was justified because I was royal. And in their minds, royal was synonymous with non-person. Centuries ago, royal men and women were considered divine. Now they were insects. What fun to pluck their wings. Pa's office lodged a formal complaint, publicly demanded an apology, accused the paper of bullying his younger son. The newspaper told Pa's office to sod off. Before trying to move on with my life, I took one last look at the article. Of all the things that surprised me about it, the truly flabbergasting thing was the absolutely shitty writing. I was a poor student, a dreadful writer, and yet I had enough education to recognize that this right here was a masterclass in illiteracy. To take one example, after explaining that I had been grievously injured, that I was nearly on death's door, the article went on to caution breathlessly that the exact nature of my injury couldn't be revealed because the royal family had forbidden the editors to do so, as if my family had any control over those ghouls. To reassure you, we can say that Harry's injuries are not serious, but the accident was considered grave enough for him to be taken to the hospital. But we believe you are entitled to know if an heir to the throne is involved in an accident, however small, if it results in an injury. The two buts in a row, the smug self-regard, the lack of coherence and absence of any real point, the hysterical nothingness of it all. This dog's dinner of a paragraph was, was said to be edited, or more likely written, by a young journalist whose name I scanned and then quickly forgot. I didn't think I didn't think I'd ever run across it or him again. The way he wrote, I couldn't imagine he'd be a working journalist much longer. Morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Don't make me excited. Don't make me excited. I'm happy to see you all, official in the place, and Kada and Janice and everybody else in the place. Yes, I hope you all are enjoying the book because I'm certainly enjoying it. And I know a lot of people are not going to be buying the book. So y'all won't buy it, I'll read it for y'all. I forgot who used the word first. Someone in the press, probably, or one of my teachers. Whoever, it took hold and circulated. I had been cast in my role in the rolling royal melodrama long before I was old enough to drink a beer legally. It became dogma. You hear him say legally. That means he probably been sipping beer, huh? Just like him, just like he been trying the cig and the weed. Harry, yeah, he's the naughty one. Naughty because the tide I swam against, the headwind I flew against, the daily expectation I could never hope to shake. I didn't want to be naughty. I wanted to be noble. I wanted to be good, work hard, grow up, and do something meaningful with my days. But every sin, every misstep, every setback triggered the same tired label. And the same public condemnations, and thereby reinforced the conventional wisdom that I was innately naughty. Things might have been different if I had achieved good grades, but I didn't, and everyone knew it. My reports were in the public domain. The whole Commonwealth was aware of my academic struggles, which were largely due to being overmatched at Eton. But no one ever discussed the other probable cause, mummy. Study, concentration, requires an alliance with the mind. And in my teen years, I was waging all-out war with mine. I was forever fending off its darkest thoughts, its basest fears, its fondest memories. The fonder the memory, the deeper the ache. I'd found strategies for doing this, some healthy, some not, but all quite effective. And whenever they were unavailable, for instance, when I was forced to sit quietly with a book, I freaked out. Naturally, I avoided such situations. At all costs, I avoided sitting quietly with a book. I have never read about none of a better way to release a movie. Ajabu, you funny. It struck me at some point that the whole basis of education was memory, a list of names, a column of numbers, a mathematical formula, a beautiful poem. To learn it, you had to upload it to the part of your brain that stored stuff. But that was the same part of my brain I was resisting. My memory had been spotty since mommy disappeared by design, and I didn't want to fix it because memory equaled grief. Not remembering was bomb. It's also possible that I'm misremembering my own struggles with memory from back then because I do recall being very good at memorizing some things, like long passages from Ace Ventura and The Lion King. I'd recite them often to mates, to myself. Also, there's a photo of me sitting in my room at my pull-out desk, and there, amid the cubbyholes and chaotic papers, sits a silver-framed photo of Mummy. So, despite my clear memory of not wanting to remember her, I was also trying gamely not to forget her. Difficult as it was for me to be the naughty one and the stupid one, it was anguish for Paul because it meant I was his opposite. What troubled him most was how I went out of my way to avoid books. Pa didn't merely enjoy books, he exalted them, especially Shakespeare. He adored Henry V. He compared himself to Prince Hal. There were multiple Falstaffs in his life, like Lord Mountbatten, his beloved great uncle, and Lawrence van der Post, the, the irascible intellectual or scholar of Carl Jung. Carl Jung, guys. Anybody who studied Carl Jung? Anybody here? Oh, yeah. I did Carl Jung back in college. When I was about 6 or 7, Pa went to Stratford and delivered a fierce public defense of Shakespeare, standing in the place where Britain's greatest writer was born and died. Pa decreed the neglect of Shakespeare's plays in schools and the fading of Shakespeare from British classrooms and from the nation's collective consciousness. Pa peppered this fiery oration with quotations from Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, The Tempest, The Merchant of Venice. He plucked the lines from thin air like petals from one of his homegrown roses and tossed them into the audience. It was showmanship, but not in an empty way. He was making the point. You should all be able to do this. You should all know these lines. They are our shared heritage. We should be cherishing them, safeguarding them, and instead we are letting them die. I never doubted how much it upset Pa that I was part of the Shakespeareless hordes, and I tried to change. I opened Hamlet. Mm, lonely prince, obsessed with dead parent, watches remaining parent fall in love with dead parents is upset. I slammed it shut. No, thank you. Pa never stopped fighting the good fight. He was spending more time at Highgrove, his 350-acre estate in Gloucestershire, and it was just down the road from Stratford. So he made a point of taking me now and then. We'd turn up unannounced, watch whatever play they were putting on. It didn't matter to Pa, didn't matter to me either, though for different reasons. It was all torture. On many nights, I didn't understand most of what was taking place or being said on stage. But when I did understand, worse for me, the words burnt. They troubled. Why would I want to hear about a grief-stricken kingdom contracted in one brow of woe? That just put me in mind of August 1997. Why would I want to meditate upon the inalterable fact that all that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity? I had no time to think about eternity. The one piece of literature I remember enjoying, even savoring, was a slender American novel, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. We were we were assigned it in our English divs. Unlike Shakespeare, Steinbeck didn't need a translator. He wrote in plain, simple vernacular. Better yet, he kept it tight. Of Mice and Men, a brisk 150 pages. And y'all know I'm going to look up that book, right? Of Mice and Men. I don't remember reading that book. Best of all, its plot was diverting. Two blokes, George and Lenny, gadding about California, looking for a place to call their own, trying to overcome their limitations. Neither is a genius, but Lenny's trouble seems to be more than low IQ. He keeps a dead mouse in his pocket, strokes it with his thumb for comfort. He also loves the puppy so much that he kills it. A story about friendship, about brotherhood, about loyalty. It was filled with themes I found relatable. George and Lenny put me in mind of Willie and me, two pals, two nomads, going through the same thing, watching each other's back. As Steinbeck had one character say, a guy needs somebody to be near him. A guy goes nuts if he aimed if he ain't got nobody. What the hell? A guy goes nuts if he ain't got nobody. So true. I wanted to share it with Willie. Too bad he was still pretending not to know me. Guys, welcome into the live. We have just about 7 minutes to go. We read for just an hour a day. Oh my. Okay. We are on to page 21, guys. Welcome into the live. If you have not yet read the book Spare, come on over. This is our third reading, so you might want to go and check the ones before so that you do not miss a thing. I hope I'm doing a pretty good job at it. I hope so. I hope you all are enjoying it. Whatever the case is, I'm going to read it for you. I'm going to read it for me, and y'all going to listen. Thank you all so much. Page 21. Must have seen early spring 1999. I must have been home from Eton for the weekend. I woke to find Pa on the edge of my bed, saying I was going back to Africa. Africa, Pa? Yes, darling boy. Why? It was the same old problem, he explained. I was facing a longer school holiday over Easter, and something needed to be done with me. So Africa, Botswana to be precise, a safari. Safari with you, Pa? No, alas, he wouldn't be going along this time, but Willie would. Oh, good. And someone very specially added, acting as our African guide. Who, Pa? Marco. Marco? I barely knew the man, though I had heard good things. He was Willie's minder, and Willie seemed to like him very much. Everyone did, for that matter. Of all Pa's people, there was consensus that Marco was the best, the roughest, the toughest, the most dashing. Longtime Welsh guard, raconteur, raconteur, man's man, through and through. I was so excited about the prospect of this Marco led safari, I don't know how I got through the following weeks of school. I don't actually recall getting through them. In fact, memory winks out completely. Right after Pa delivered the news, then snaps back into focus as I'm boarding a British Airways jet with Marco and Willie and Tiggy, one of our nannies. Our favorite nanny, to be accurate, though Tiggy couldn't stand being called that. She'd bite the head off anyone who tried. I'm not the nanny, I'm your friend. Mommy sadly didn't see it that way. Mommy saw Tiggy not as a nanny, but as a rival. It's common knowledge that Mommy suspected Tiggy was being groomed as her future replacement. Did Mommy see Tiggy as her spare? Now same woman whom Mommy feared as her possible replacement was her actual replacement. How dreadful for Mommy. Every hug or head pat from Tiggy, therefore, must have unleashed some twinge of guilt, some throb of disloyalty. And yet, I don't remember that. I remember only heart racing joy to have Tiggy next to me, telling me to buckle my seatbelt. We flew directly to Johannesburg, then by prop plane to Maun, the largest city in northern Botswana. There we met up with a large crowd of safari guides who steered us into a convoy of open top Land Cruisers. We drove off straight into pure wilderness towards the vast Okavana Delta, which I soon discovered was possibly the most exquisite place on earth. The Okavangwa is often called a river, but that's like calling Windsor Castle a house. A vast inland delta, smack in the middle of the Kalahari Desert, one of the largest deserts on earth. The lower Okavangwa is bone dry for part of the year. Then come late summer, it begins to fill with floodwaters from upstream. Little droplets that little droplets that begin as rainfall in the Angola highlands and slowly swell to a trickle, then a flow, which steadily transforms the delta into, into not one river, but dozens. From outer space, it looks like the chambers of a heart filling with blood. With water comes life, a profusion of animals, possibly the most biodiverse collection anywhere. They come to drink, to bathe, to mate. Imagine if the ark suddenly appeared, then capsized. As we neared this enchanted place, I had trouble catching my breath. Lions, zebras, giraffes, hippos. Surely this was all a dream. At last, we stopped, our campsite for the weekend. The spot was bustling with more guides, more trackers, a dozen people at least. Lots of high fives, beer hugs, names flung at us. Harry, William, say hi to Addie, 25 years old, long hair, sweet smile. Harry, William, say hi to Roger and David. And at the center of it all stood Marco, like a traffic cop, directing, cajoling, embracing, barking, laughing, always laughing. In no time, he had pulled our campsite into shape. Big green canvas tents, soft canvas chairs grouped in circles, including one enormous circle around a stone rimmed campfire. Joseph! Joseph, how are you doing, my darling Joseph? Vibes with Thompson family is also here. Vibes, how are you doing, my love? How are you doing? Good to see you. I am here reading the book. Yeah. And while I read and you listen, I am enjoying it. And I think it's better for me to be reading it outside rather than inside. Because when I go in the house and I look on the couch and I look on the bed, it says come. They call me. They say come. Come. They call me. They deliberately call me and say, come on over. We're waiting for you. And I plot myself on either one of them. And that's it. I'm out like a light bulb. So sitting here and reading it for you. No sun is coming up. It's just a bleak morning. Oh, I didn't know my neighbor was a nurse. Okay. Okay. Oh, there she is. Yeah, so it's a bleaky morning. Bleaky, whatever, call it whatever. But it's a wet morning. It's a morning that not wet, but icy cold. Icy cold, no sun coming out. Just, you know what I mean. But anyway, I am here, guys, and you all are here, and that's what matters the most. And Overton is here. Overton, you hear me reading your cousin book? Overton, I'm here reading your cousin's book. Let us continue, guys. Let us continue. There looks like about 10 million billion people in the place. I appreciate y'all. Thank you all so much for coming. All right. When I think about that trip, my mind goes immediately to that fire, just as my skinny body did then. The fire was where we'd all collect at regular intervals throughout the day. First thing in the morning, again at midday, again at dusk, and above all, after supper, we'd stare into that fire. Then up at the universe, the stars looked like sparks from the logs. One of the guides called the fire Bush TV. Yes, I said, every time you threw a new log on, it's like changing the channel. They all loved that. The fire. I noticed, hypnotized or narcotized every adult in our party. In its orange glow, their face grew softer, their tongues looser. Then, as the hour got later, out came the whiskey, and they would all undergo another sea change. Their laughter would get louder. I'd think, more of this, please. More fire, more talk, more loud laughter. I'd been scared of darkness all my life, and it turned out Africa had the cure, the campfire. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm enjoying it. It said, I said an hour, but I feel like doing more. So we're going to do more. I'm enjoying it. And people are texting me back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but that's okay. Page 22. Marco, the largest member of the group, also laughed the loudest. There was some ratio between the size of his body and the radius of his bellows. Also, there was a similar link between the volume of his voice and the bright shade of his hair. I was a ginger, self-conscious about it, but Marco was an extreme ginger and owned it. I gawped at him and thought, teach me to be like that. Marco, however, wasn't your typical teacher, perpetually moving, perpetually doing. He loved many things: food, travel, nature, guns, us, but he had no interest in giving lectures. He was more about leading by example and having a good time. He was one great big ginger Mardi Gras, and if you wanted to join the party, wonderful, and if not, that was grand too. I wondered many times, watching him wolf his dinner, gulp his gin, shout another joke, slap another trucker on the back, why more people weren't like this guy. Why didn't more at least try? I wanted to ask Willie what it was like to have such a man minding him, guiding him, but apparently the Eton rule carried over to Botswana. Willie didn't want to know me in the bush any more than he did back at school. The one thing about Marco that gave me pause was his time in the Welsh Guards. I'd sometimes look at him on that trip and see those 8 Welsh Guards in their red tunics, hoisting that coffin onto their shoulders and marching down the Abbey aisle. I tried to remind myself that Marco wasn't there that day. I tried to remind myself that, anyway, the box was empty. All was well. Joseph said, oh, me and the cold. Joseph, the cold is colding, believe me. The cold is colding. You see me, I wear a scarf, me in my jacket, me in my undershirt here, so I'm a scrub. Yeah, yeah, it's cold. It is cold. But I don't think it is as cold as yesterday because yesterday my fingers were starting to change color. It's not as cold, or is it because I had the heater on all the way? Maybe. I don't know. But let me look and see what's the temperature because the my neighbor in front of me, the water settles on his driveway and the water is ice. So let me see. Let me see, Joseph. I'll tell you the temperature. Well, it's actually 30 degrees. So it is indeed colding. Yes, it is 30 degrees. The water on my neighbor's driveway is frozen. So yeah, here I am sitting here. Yeah. Where am I? Okay. Wait, let me read that last part again. All was well. Oh, yesterday you had 0. Yeah, yesterday was really cold. When Tiggy suggested I go to bed, always before everyone else, I didn't squawk. The days were long. The tent was a welcome cocoon. Its canvas smelled pleasantly of old books. Its floor was covered with soft antelope skins. My bed was wrapped in a cozy African rug. For the first time in months, years even, I'd drop off straight away. Of course, it helped to have that campfire glowing against the wall, to hear those adults on the other side and the animals beyond. Screeches, bleats, roars. What a racket they made after dark. Their busy time, their rush hour. The later it got, the louder they got. I found it soothing. I also found it hilarious. No matter how loud the animals, I could still hear Marco laughing. One night before I fell asleep, I made myself a promise. I'm going to find a way to make that guy laugh. Page 23. All right, this is going to be the last page we read for the morning. All right, guys, I'm just preparing you all so that when I stop, you all don't feel disappointed, okay? Like me, Marco had a sweet tooth. Like me, he particularly loved puddings. He always called them puds. So I got the idea of spiking his pudding with Tabasco sauce. At first, he'd howl, but then he'd realize it was a trick and laughed. Oh, how he'd laugh. Then he'd realize it was me and laughed louder. I couldn't wait. The next night, as everyone tucked into their dinner, I tiptoed out of the meal tent. I went down the footpath, 50 meters, into the kitchen tent, and poured a whole teacup of Tabasco sauce into Marco's bowl of pudding. It was bread and butter, Mummy's favorite. The kitchen, the kitchen crew saw me, but I put a finger to my lips, and they chuckled. Scurrying back into the meal tent, I gave Tiggy a wink. I had already taken her into my confidence, and she thought the whole caper brilliant. I didn't remember if I told Willie what I was up to. Probably not. I knew he wouldn't have approved. I squirmed, counting the minutes until dessert was served. Fighting back giggles. Suddenly someone cried out, "Why?" Someone else cried, "What?" In unison, we all turned. Just outside the open tent was a tawny tail swishing through the air. Leopard! Everyone froze except me. I took a step towards it. Marco gripped my shoulder. The leopard walked away like a prima ballerina across the footpath where I'd just been. I turned back in time to see the adults all look at one another, mouths open. Holy fuck! Then their eyes turned towards me. Holy fuck! Oh! They were all thinking the same thing, picturing the same banner headline back home. Prince Harry mauled by a leopard. The whole world would reel, heads would roll. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about Mummy. That leopard was clearly a sign from her, a messenger she had sent to say, all is well and all will be well. At the same time, I also thought the horror. What if Mummy were to come out of hiding at last, only to learn that her younger son had been eaten alive? Oh my gosh, guys. Oh my gosh. That was an hour and 11 minutes. I enjoyed every minute of it. Every word. This writer is the bomb. I just love it. I can't stop, guys. I cannot. But that's going to be it for today. Yes. When we come back tomorrow morning, we will be starting on page 24. And we are going to do an hour reading a day until we have read all the pages. I think it is 400 and something pages. Yes. And Kindle tell you how much you have read already. I've only read 13%. So we have a long way to go, guys. But we are going to do it. We are going to read this book. I hope you all are loving it as much as I am loving it. I'm enjoying it. And I hope you are too. So come back here tomorrow morning at around the same time, tomorrow morning, and let us continue to read the book Spare by Prince Harry. All right, guys, that's going to be it from me for today, my friends. Until next time, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. See you all later, my friends. Have yourselves a great day. Sleep starting to walk all over my skin.